going to start off. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the Forging Better Options, an exploration of aged and community care considerations for forgotten Australians and other care leavers. This is being hosted by the National Aged and Community Care Roundtable for Forgotten Australians, and many members of the Roundtable are present here today. Firstly, before we start today's session, may I acknowledge the traditional owners. I would like to acknowledge that we are delivering this event from many different traditional lands. I myself are on the lands of the beautiful lands and seas of the Kondamibka people in southeast Queensland. And I pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging. We are honoured to recognise their connection to their country, history, culture and spirituality through these locations, and strive to ensure that we operate in a manner which respects and honours ancestors and elders of these lands. I'd also like to acknowledge the many care leavers and forgotten Australians who are joining us today. It's your past and present activism and advocacy that really have strived to get better deals for individuals who are forgotten Australians or care leavers. It's your contribution that acknowledges why we're here today, and I humbly acknowledge each and every one of you. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Anne Livingston. I'm the chair of the National Aged and Community Care Roundtable for Forgotten Australians. I also have a couple of day jobs. I'm currently the executive lead of the Australian Aged Care Industry Technology Council, but my real day job is Director of Projects and Research at Global Community Resourcing. It's my honour to be Masters of Ceremony today, along with many other contributors to the National Roundtable. This session today is being run in conjunction with a number of worldwide events as part of International Care Experience History Month. And this is our third or fourth activity in the International Care Experience History Month that was started in Scotland by Who Cares Scotland. I would like to welcome everyone in the room and joining us online today from their homes, from your offices, from your state and territory hubs, and joining from wherever you might be on the beach or in the mountains. Thank you for being on board today. I'd like to call out to the state and territory hubs around the country, and particularly acknowledge the hub coordinators, Wattle Place in New South Wales, Lotus Place and Micah in Queensland, Open Place in Victoria, and Chewett Place in Western Australia. We've been overwhelmed by the registrations we've had for today's event. And I think it's fair to say every state and territory is represented, and I welcome your involvement. Before we get underway, just a little bit of housekeeping. Your microphones have been muted and cameras turned off. This is really for the purpose of recording, so we can share the event with many others, and we plan to do that shortly after we finish today's event. We would love questions and answers, and to make this interactive, so please use the Q&A panel, which you can find at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions and answers through the event. Each state and territory virtual hub has nominated a spokesperson. So if you're in one of those hubs, hopefully during the presentations, you will be jotting down your questions But to arrange this efficiently, one person in that hub has been nominated to ask the questions either on behalf of you as an individual or on behalf of your hub. If there are any inquiries or if you do need any technical support during the event today, please just contact your state or territory support team in your hub, or please put in the chat panel and the events team here will be able to assist you. I'd like to acknowledge the events team behind the scenes who's doing the hard work, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of Emma and Georgie today to bring this session to fruition. We know today we might be covering some items or some information that might be sensitive to you or to your group. I'd just like to suggest that if you are overwhelmed or concerned, that you do reach out to your support team in the hubs, if you're in a hub, or a friend, or perhaps a support line, and we've got a couple of those on board. If you'd like any other help, please reach out to us through the chat pane as well. Today's event would not have been possible without support and sponsorship. I'd like to acknowledge the various event partners and key sponsors individually. Our major event partner is the Department of Health and Aged Care in the Australian Government, and I do acknowledge their ongoing support and assistance in the work of the National Roundtable. I'd also like to acknowledge our platinum sponsor, Mica Projects, our diamond sponsor, Global Community Resourcing, our gold sponsors, Helping Hand and Aspire for Life, and also our events sponsor, Governance by Design, and Regional Development Australia, Logan and Redlands, where today's event team is presenting, who have assisted us with being a sponsor of the technology and AV to make today's session possible. Thank you. All of your sponsorship has made this event a reality. So let's get underway. This event, as I mentioned, is being hosted as part of the International Care Experience History Month. This History Month was initiated by Who Cares Scotland in April 2021. Who Cares Scotland is a voluntary organisation working with care experienced young people and care leavers right across Scotland. We've collaborated with Who Cares Scotland since the beginning of this event, and the goal of the month is to make this a month that internationally acknowledges the history, the experiences, and also the significant contributions made to all our communities by care leavers, or in our case, in our country, Forgotten Australians. It celebrates their advocacy, activism, but also their huge resilience and their stories. And you'll hear a lot more about the month as we go through today's event. The National Roundtable is honoured to host this event. The Roundtable was established and continues the work that started at a national forum held by Wattle Place in Sydney, and I believe that was the 6th of June 2019, well before COVID, when we were all able to join in person, and brought together many interested parties to make aged and community care more appropriate and a better fit for Forgotten Australians and other care leavers. So this group aims to spotlight the needs of Forgotten Australians in aged and community care, and our group is dedicated to directly supporting the interests of Forgotten Australians and other care leavers through collaboration, awareness raising, and sharing of networks, resources, knowledge, and stories. We've hosted a number of very successful forums in the past, and you can see those on your screen now. Since 2022, we've endeavoured to provide a real spotlight on the issues of ageing for forgotten Australians. We've also participated in a number of events and projects, including as a result of our first national forum. We were approached and worked with the Council on the Ageing Quota nationally to be part of the Care Navigators trial. And it was great that some of us worked on a submission right up till Christmas, and that eventuated in positions being added to the landscape in Queensland and Western Australia as part of a dedicated focus for care navigation for forgotten Australians. We've also been spending a lot of time recently raising awareness about the redress payments and them being immediately seen as assets under the Aged Care Act. And we've been working with the authors of the new Act to ensure that that can be addressed, and there may be some exemption from assets testing. We also received a grant from Truth, Healing and Reconciliation Task Force funding that really enabled us to put a website together, and I would encourage you to access the website. It's got great resources. I'm really pleased to say that in 2022, pretty early in our development, the National Roundtable won the National Ageing Future of Ageing Award in the category of community engagement. And I don't know if you'll see that with my background, but I'm holding this award on behalf of all members of the National Roundtable. The award really recognises leaders and other organisations that are striving to improve the lives of ageing Australians, and it was great to be acknowledged in that award. But I'm also pleased to hot off the press to tell you that the National Aged and Community Care Roundtable for Forgotten Australians has also been judged and nominated as a finalist in the 12th Annual Asia Pacific Elder Care Innovation Awards in the Innovation of the Year in Community Social Engagement category. We'll be able to tell you next month if we're the winner, but I think being a finalist is great. So now it's my opportunity to introduce the first session, and I'd like to acknowledge that the first session was going to be introduced by a co-convener of other national events, Dot Ritchie. But Dot's sadly an apology today due to unforeseen circumstances. But I'd like to acknowledge Dot and her tireless advocacy for forgotten Australians. And I'd like to welcome and introduce Gloria Lovely. Gloria, thank you so much for facilitating our first session of the day. Gloria is joining us from Lotus Place in the CBD of Brisbane. So welcome on board, Gloria. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, and hello, everyone. Now, to begin today's session, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Miss Isolde Kaufman. Isolde is the Director of Aged Care Diversity and Inclusion Section in the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care. She has worked across the department for over 20 years in Indigenous health, chronic disease and aged care policy and program management roles. Her current role fulfills the passion for diverse cultures and promoting inclusive aged care that benefits the diversity of our Australian community.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Thanks for that introduction. I would also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting, and also acknowledge the trauma and abuse that many of you have experienced in institutional or out-of-home care. Next slide, thank you. I'm going to speak about 6 topics. So just very quickly, the new Aged Care Act, the Enhanced Aged Care Quality Standards, a program that we fund for Forgotten Australians, Real Care the second time around, briefly about my aged care provider specialisation verification, the trauma-informed care training that the department has funded, and the National Redress Scheme. Next slide, thanks. So starting with the new Aged Care Act, the objects of the new Act, next slide, thanks, as well, will outline the overarching purposes of the legislation to assist the courts and others to interpret the new legislative framework. The draft of the Act has had positive feedback, with agreement on placing the needs of older people at the centre of the new aged care system. It includes a clear reference to the Statement of Rights and upholding these rights. It also has a goal of providing sustainable funding arrangements for the delivery of funded aged care services by a diverse, trained and skilled workforce. Next slide, thanks. This slide might be a bit small for you to see, and I won't go into it in detail, but basically it outlines how the rights of older people will be upheld under the new Act in terms of complaints resolution, actions taken with a potential breach, and enforcement actions. So there's a range of enforcement actions that can be taken if a person has a complaint, which they can either make to an aged care provider or to the Commission. So that's an older person receiving subsidised aged care. Next slide, thank you. The new Aged Care Act has had a bit of a process. So the draft bill was released last December. There were consultations for 12 weeks, which ended recently, and a range of engagement activities to elicit feedback from key stakeholders. Next slide, thanks. There were a range of key themes that emerged. So these included, that slide, thank you. Implementation timeframes, so there's commentary on that, a lot of input on rights and principles, what the definition of high quality care is, the scope of the duty of care, arrangements for the Complaints Commissioner, whistleblower protections, supporter and representative roles and clarity around that, the review of decisions and timeframes for action, and the use of computer-aided decisions. I should mention that we can send around these slides, so no need to take frantic notes. Next steps in the process include analysing the feedback from the consultations, publishing a final feedback report and submissions, redrafting relevant parts of the legislation, and finalising and introducing the bill this year, 2024, subject to the passage of the legislation in Parliament. Next slide, thanks. I'm going to very briefly talk about the Enhanced Aged Care Quality Standards now. So these are also part of the law governing aged care services. Current Commonwealth law requires all government-funded aged care providers to meet the aged care quality standards to ensure that quality care and services are provided to older people. Aged care providers need to demonstrate that each care recipient gets safe and effective personal and clinical care that is best practice, tailored to the needs, and which optimises their health, well-being and quality of life. The Royal Commission, though, noted that they needed to be strengthened. So the aged care quality standards have recently been strengthened to make them more comprehensive, measurable, and easy to understand to better support quality care. Next slide, thanks. So the draft standards have been developed and they were trialled by the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. That trial and review is complete, and the final draft of the strengthened quality standards will be written into legislation under the new Aged Care Act. I would mention that the enhanced quality standards lists people who are care leavers as a diverse group in the intent of standard 1, which talks about the person. I'm going to move on to talk about the project that the department funds now, Real Care the second time around. The department has been funding this project since 2021. It's to help the aged care sector better understand and respond to the needs of care leavers and forgotten Australians. And it has developed trauma-informed care training and resources, which are listed on this slide. It's built on the outcomes of the 2019 to 2021 pilot project, and continues to raise awareness of the challenges and barriers forgotten Australians face, as well as building capacity across the sector to deliver care that's trauma-informed and person-centered. Next slide, thanks. Just quickly, I want to run through my aged care provider specialisation verification. Next slide, thanks, which was a recommendation of the Royal Commission's final report. Next slide, thank you. And it puts in place a mechanism, and next slide, thanks, to check the accuracy of claims made by aged care providers on my aged care that they deliver specialist care for older people from diverse backgrounds. So it's a transparency and an accuracy measure. And this slide on the right-hand side shows what it looks like if you're searching for care. You go to the Find a Provider tool and you can select the specialised care, any of the diverse groups that you're interested in, and then the search result will come up with any that meet those criteria. Next slide, thanks. After the Royal Commission recommendation, this framework here governs the claims that can be made by aged care providers. So the provider needs to fulfil criteria set out in the framework. For care leavers and forgotten Australians, there's 8 criteria to choose from. The provider just needs to select 4 of those criteria. Next slide, thanks. And it's a fairly easy process to undertake. There's information available on the department's website, and the actual application by the provider is through the service and support portal. And the right-hand box there shows where you can find more information to participate. We would like more participation, particularly on forgotten Australians. We haven't had any aged care providers claiming to specialise in this cohort to date, which is disappointing. Next slide, thanks, is my second last topic, talking about trauma-informed care training. So these are learning modules for anyone interested in aged care, including personal care workers, nurses, allied health professionals, volunteers and families. And they can be accessed and include a module on trauma-informed care as an introductory or a refresher module. And they specifically cover care leavers and forgotten Australians and use resources which were developed in 2016 as part of the training materials. These modules are all free as well. Next slide, thanks. Over 16,000 people have completed one or more of the 14 modules, and this slide just outlines the goal of the training modules in trauma-informed care. They were developed by the University of Tasmania with our Australian government funding. My last topic just to touch on is the National Redress Scheme, which was mentioned in the introduction. So next slide, thanks. The department is aware, and the next one as well, thanks, that payments made to people under the National Redress Scheme are impacting aged care means assessments, in that the amount a person entering residential aged care can be asked to contribute towards the cost of their accommodation and care is determined through a combined income and assets test, and payments made under redress are by default considered an assessable asset for pension and aged care purposes. And this impacts aged care fees in residential aged care. Next slide, thanks. And this is related to the National Redress Scheme for Institutional Child Sexual Abuse Rules 2018, which include confidentiality provisions that impact on aged care payments in this way. So to address the concerns that have been raised about the impact of this on the assets in aged care, there's a bit of a process that's underway, being led by the Roundtable for Forgotten Australians with my department and Department of Social Services participation. The next step is amendments to the rules require unanimous agreement from all states and territories under the Intergovernmental Agreement to the National Redress Scheme. Next slide, thanks. So my department is continuing to work with the Department of Social Services and the National Roundtable. Ultimately, it's a decision of government. That concludes my quick rundown on aged care reforms and relevant programs. If you have some questions, I'm happy to take them, or you can direct questions to this email address as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isolde. That was a great presentation. And over to you, Gloria, for the vote of thanks.
Yes, and thank you also, Isolde, for your presentation today. Very well done. I would now like to hand back to Anne Livingston to introduce the next session of the Virtual National Forum.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Isolde. It's my pleasure now to hand over to our next speaker. And this session was to be facilitated by Anne McVeigh in Western Australia. Anne's not able to join us today, but I know that many people in Western Australia are being part of today's session. Pleasure to introduce Peter Richards, a highly decorated architect. And I had the pleasure of working with Peter some 20 years ago when we were both young and didn't have grey hair, Peter. Peter, exactly. I need to acknowledge when we approached Peter about a design competition that the Commonwealth Government was running around future designs for aged care, I thought of no other better architect to approach than the award-winning Peter Richards, who did his Churchill Fellowship looking at design, more appropriate design and co-design of future living. Peter and I worked together some 20 years ago on a unique design project around relocating a respite care centre. And that was very unique of the time because we relocated it with an emergency service. And it was a forerunner to the Queensland Government redesigning their ambulance stations as well. So it's my great pleasure to acknowledge that Peter was willing to provide his services pro bono with a large team from his current architectural practice. And we really thank you to the contribution. I think it's a significant piece of work, not only for residential aged care providers, but specifically for forgotten Australians. So over to you, Peter. Look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, and happy to be able to chat to you all, and happy to be here. So as Anne said, there's a competition that was being run by the government, and Anne thought of me. She has a long memory. It's actually 25 years ago, Anne, not 20. It feels like 20. And you have a long memory, and so do I, in fact. But we're asked to assist forgotten Australians to realise design ideas for this competition, and we thought it was a good project to support. The competition had two potential sites to look at. One was an urban site, so you go higher with height and density, and one was a regional site, like in a regional town with lower height and density. And that was one of the early discussions of it. But the process was fairly short. I think over a 6 or 7 week period, we had a number of meetings and discussions with Forgotten Australians, both in our office and at Stones Corner, and trying to be consultative as well as to answer the issues of the brief. So if we go to the next page, if we can change the slide, it would be good. Thank you. So the two sites were, as I said, urban and then regional. And we think the regional site was in fact Broken Hill. One of my whiz-bang young architects did a Google image search or something and found where it was. But on the left-hand side is the site plan. And I think it was about 7,000 square metres, quite a large site. Had a school nearby, streets on sides and then individual houses behind. The brief was quite well thought through. There were design principles and issues which arose from the Royal Commission, and also some information about the context and the people who lived in the area, which were cues for you to work with. So that was all good. Next page. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I won't have time to really explain everything in detail, but try to give you a flavour of the work that was done. So if we go to the next slide. So we're asked to do 3 A1, you're ahead of me now, 3 A1 panels. These are the panels. I'll talk about them in a second. So we go to the next slide. This gives you a sense of what the work was like. Yeah, next one. Thank you. So some of the things that emerged from the conversations with Forgotten Australians was the need for identity and individuality, feeling yourself in a place, not an institution, obviously. Being safe and secure, comfort and sense of control, embrace the natural environment. This came through very strongly in terms of connection to nature, and that really did shape the design of the building, and being able to get access to green areas quite comfortably from all parts of the of where you were living, and then being able to engage in different ways. And as you'll see with the way the design has been framed, you can have clusters of small groups interacting with clusters of larger groups, and being able to have some control over to the extent that you want to be, you know, sort of retiring and quiet, doing quiet things and being on your own, and having a little more social interaction. So these were some guiding principles. We go to the next slide. This is a bit architectural, this stuff, but I'll just try and explain what was happening. Is that one of the things we wanted is the building to actually connect to the surrounding area. We thought that you didn't want to have a big car park between the streets and the building and feel like that this project was separated from the community. We thought that connecting to the community was a nice thing. So we actually put the car parking and access on the side away from where the streets were, so the buildings could actually address the streets. And you can see on the second map on the left-hand side, little dome on the left-hand side there, we're able to actually break the project into a couple of different precincts. And the main supported accommodation, sort of more residential aged care form of accommodation, was in the two left-hand wings, and we had an assisted living come just apartment development that gave variety of choice and also ability for family and friends to come and stay potentially, with a little cafe on the street on the main address. But the key idea is the bottom left drawing, where we had little wings of 8 rooms sharing a wing, and each side of the wing opened onto green space. And where the elbow of the wings were, we had services and staff areas. The common areas of the sort of living and dining type space, the shared areas were close to the central elbow, and that allowed the living spaces to actually interact with each other, so you could be in your own little household, as it were, but also interact with people adjacent. And so this was a really important idea. And then the right-hand one, the top right image, is about the idea that we don't really want corridors. One of the issues with these sorts of buildings is that you need to have circulation movement. So we tried to skew the buildings and it's in a way sort of scatter them on the side a bit in a more informal arrangement, So you're feeling like you're walking through more of maybe a garden's not the right word, but an informal kind of access circulation, like you might walk through a landscape with views out between the shared rooms. And what that meant was that the architecture could then become a cluster of houses, creating the wings. And so trying to show on the second drawing on the right-hand side there that a cluster of single and double story, because of the competition brief required a number of rooms, so some parts were in fact 2 stories, one parts were single story, so the upper level apartments could look out over to green spaces as well, and then have a series of rooms of different sizes that could combine together in the bottom right. So if you go to the next page. So the way that the project looks is that you can see there's the two arms, as it were, sort of are holding the courtyards. Each of those wings with eight rooms each, and then the second story along the long face of the building. You can see the courtyard. In between, in the centre of the plan, where the little image on the top left is actually a formal garden, and we thought that was a garden for a more solemn space of gathering and remembrance as well there, which also could be open to the public and the community. So you have a gate off the street to walk in there. And then in the centre of the plan was all the main entrance and common and staff areas coming through there. So you had the efficiency for staffing the building, but also but nice wings of rooms and the clusters of houses, as it were, looking onto these courtyards. One of the things about the presentation which you thought was important, and you'll see, and you can't read them, I'm sorry, but at one point you'll be able to see them in due course, is that each of the ideas for the project, we actually tried to use little speech bubbles, and the speech bubbles are written about from the user's perspective. And certainly in the conversations we had with Forgotten Australians, we picked up ideas and thoughts and principles from that. So we've tried to give the project a degree of humanity and personality on the voices of the people who might be there. And for an architect, that's quite interesting and quite powerful. So we're not just presenting a plan, we're presenting a way that people live and the way people might interact with spaces. So we have the overall model, and then we have a series of sort of eye-level views that show the different arrangements of the entrances and the car parking. We've got to accommodate visitor parking and staff parking and rubbish bins and deliveries for kitchens and all those sorts of things as well. So now that was all part of the consideration. But you can see that the interface on the bottom of the page is to the surrounding streets and the housing, is trying to show that this project does integrate with the community and doesn't sort of turn its back on the community. If you go to the next page. So we're obliged to do floor plans, obviously, and that explains the scheme. And again, the drawings are too small to explain completely. But the illustrations on the top right of the courtyard sort of shows the scale of the courtyard. It's trying to show the nature of the roof forms of the small houses, the clustering, the 1 and 2 story houses. There's raised garden beds and nice shade trees and areas for walking and sitting and gathering. And we could have developed the landscape ideas a bit more, but we sort of they're a bit cursory, I think. But the time didn't permit us to really do a lot more necessarily in that regard. But the intention is to show the nature of vegetation and the range of experience. There's garden rooms and the barbecue spaces in the courtyards. There's outdoor pergola shaded areas for the living spaces in the courtyards. And then the bottom right drawing is the view looking from the main living and dining areas, looking towards the courtyards and the outdoor covered spaces. So that's trying to show the nature of the public sides of the spaces. We go to the next page now. So this gives you a better feeling for what the corridors might feel like and look like, and you can see the idea of scattering the rooms on the site a bit and not having an institutional long narrow corridor, but having something that changes width, it gets a bit wider. There are breaks between each of the little paired rooms with looking to courtyards and access to outside. You can see the lounge and dining areas there, and the small kitchen servery on the left-hand side, on the bottom left of that little wing. And then at the end of the wing on the right-hand side of the service space is another sitting area. And then that was the staircase to go upstairs as well. So the idea is to feel celebrating, we think, the paired rooms as little houses, and that we've got larger rooms and smaller rooms, so there's a natural variety of there, and there's ways you could do it. All the bathrooms are naturally ventilated in this arrangement, so it's good for energy conservation. All the downstairs rooms have access to a small private terrace before you look out onto the outdoor areas, so the connection to landscape and being able to sit on a small veranda space and talk to people who want to come past, and to and you can join and connect with them and sit. And similarly, the little sitting rooms have outdoor areas as well. The two bottom right plans show the nature of the entrances, incorporating shelving for personal items and some planting, hopefully, and like a small doorway. So again, it's like celebrating this is your home and this is your entrance and arrival. There's a small dog there, I think. And then in the room itself, looking to the courtyards and having a bit of technology included. So the idea of being able to use technology to support your the way that you can live was all considered as well. So look, that's the basic rundown of the project. I look back at it, having not looked at it for a little while, and I think we did a lot of work in a short period of time, and certainly it benefited from the discussions that we had with all the Forgotten Australians, and they had a great commitment to being involved in the project as well, and we really did appreciate that, and gave us quite remarkable insights into, you know, how we might shape an urban or a residential living environment to serve and suit people's needs. So we go to the next slide. So look, we were very happy that Anne gave us a call. Architects like, and I'm particularly of this mind, is that we like to work on projects that mean something to people and are important to people and can really have a contribution to people's lives. And so we're very, very honoured and happy, Anne, that you asked us to assist you, and we hope that the work that we've done will be a contribution to the discussions about better living solutions for Forgotten Australians and care leavers. So thank you very much.
Wonderful, Peter. Thank you for your presentation today. And I strongly believe that the humanity and personality that you mentioned that you've captured in design really made our contribution to the competition fabulous. And we hope that the judging panel will recognise that when it makes its final decisions at the end of the month, I believe, Peter. So we look forward to celebrating with you, but we also look forward to just basically promoting the work, because we believe it's first of its type co-design with Forgotten Australians. Thank you again, Peter. Really appreciate you and your firm's contribution to making the aged care environments for individuals from care experience backgrounds more appropriate. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Now, I see, Al, you're on board, and I believe you can see your presentation. Everyone can see it in the room. So I'm going to reintroduce you, Al. Not that I think you need two introductions or any introduction.
No, I don't.
So Al is a very valued member of our National Roundtable. Al likes to be called a Forgotten Australian, and she has a track record of advocating passionately for improvements in across the care spectrum, from healthcare to aged care to mental health to palliative care for Forgotten Australians. In 2016, Al began collaborating with our great colleague, Professor Fernandez from the University of New South Wales School of Social Services in her landmark research study, No Child Should Grow Up Like This, identifying long-term outcomes for Forgotten Australians, child migrants, and stolen generations. She's motivated by passion for justice and passion for awareness, raising the awareness with everyone, including parliamentarians and care providers. She's been served on Workplace Consultative Committee, and she's attempted to address every recommendation of the 22 made by the Senate Reference Committee. And all of her work is targeted at better support and care for children and making the systems around children better and safer. It's my pleasure, and hopefully without any technical issues, to invite Al to talk about her participation in the design competition. Thank you, Al.
Thank you so much, Anne. And I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking my backups, Emma and Georgia. You know, Forgotten Australians, as you'll find out, are extremely resilient. So we're used to things happening and we get over it and get on with it. I worked very closely with Peter after Anne called me, you know, can you get on board competition, gave me the parameters, and I thought, okay, to consider those ideas, what I need to do is go back and relive a lot of things and thought, what is it that I want to fix up? What is it that my contribution will aid? I knew I had an idea of designs, so I felt like I gave an IT spouse with Peter over quite a few very short weeks. But today I'll be looking at my lived experiences. Now, we do have Forgotten Australians, and if you're not, perhaps get up, shake it out, maybe go for a coffee. This may be trigger setting for you. I'm used to it. I've addressed so many, you know, groups in that now, but, you know, it might be a little bit close to home. Firstly, to start with, for those people that aren't really aware of where Forgotten Australian care leaver term came into everything, the 1938 Child Welfare Act actually refers to care leavers. I don't really have a pulling towards care leaver because I don't think I was cared for when I was left. However, the 2004 Federal Parliament Senate Committee report actually had slapped over the front counter Forgotten Australians. They had actually been delayed, and somebody had said, look, we have forgotten these Australians. So that terminology came out on that report. A lot of people picked up from it. I certainly felt a lot more comfortable with that. So, you know, that's why I choose that, my preference myself. But to go ahead and reimagine the future of aged care homes for Forgotten Australians and for other care leavers, what I needed to do was, as I said, go back and consider what I've been through to sort of read that. Now, before I will move on, I'm actually from New South Wales. So I've been quite a valid member of Bottle Place, who I've had some excellent counsellors out of in the past. And just on the right of that slide, you will see the memorial which has been made to the New South Wales Forgotten Australians. It does actually say, we remember the lonely, the frightened, the lost, the abused, those who never knew the joy of loving family, who suffered too often at the hands of a system meant to provide for the safety and well-being. We rejoice in their courage and strength. I don't visit that memorial anymore because to me it's like a tombstone. So I know there's some flowers around the bottom, and we have had a lot of our Forgotten Australians, you know, visit that, and that's good. But I think we can do better, and I'm hoping that we eventually get a much better monument for the New South Wales people. Next one, please. Thank you. Moving on. Oh, maybe that's me good. Okay, so as it's already been explained by many, you know, please call me Elle. I reside in Erina, which is north of Sydney, and I live near the beautiful beaches of the Central Coast near Terrigal and Avoca. I love to go to the water, and it's the actual grounds of the Dudjing people. And it's absolutely beautiful when you look at the, you know, the things around the beaches and think, wow, you know, it would have been peaceful back in those days. My lived experiences are extremely diverse, and I commenced my New South Wales state wardship in 1956 at the age of 5, having been born in 1951. After having attended the Bajura Children's Court in New South Wales, I was moved off to settle in the Glebe Children's Home, otherwise known as Bajura, which was also a depot where children were furnished with, you know, a suitcase of the necessities to go out to welfare placement. So like shoes, singlets, underpants, etc. We all had much the same. We had bowler cuts on our head, so we looked the same. And I guess the only thing that defined us that was different back then was we had a different face and we all had a different number. That's how I looked at it anyway. My sister, I went into Bajura with my sister who was a year older and my brother a year younger. Boys were not put with girls, so I never saw my brother again until the age of 16 when I went looking for him. And I had the help of Burwood Welfare at that time to help find my brother. That year in 1956, I guess one of the reasons we end up going into care was A, we had a father that didn't give a damn about us, and B, we had a mum that was pregnant yet again. She had nowhere to go, having lost her mother, and her father wasn't around that much. So she ended up going into hospital to have my other sister, and because she went into hospital and the matron said, "Oh, who's minding your children?" Mum said, "Well, no, my children are in care, in foster care." Well, then they announced to her that she was not able to keep that child because she already had 3 in care, and that was the law. I got to meet my sister, and I found out about my sister that I hadn't known at the age of 34. So that's been a bit of a shock. So a lot of things in my life have been a shock. Please realise that as I go through this, I'm leaving out an awful lot of stuff that's happened to me as well. I do have 15 minutes and I do want to keep close to that. If we can go on to the next slide, please. This is just a picture of the Bajura Girls' Home at Glebe. Now, I actually spent most of my time between Bajura or Newcastle. King Edward up there, and I think some of the girls would remember that one there. As I said to you before, I found my brother when I was 17, but then moving back, I just want to show you how stuck some of these places are. I had to go back and actually look at what I came from and what I am happy to leave behind to focus on what I need for those last precious years of my life. And this was an example of sameness, same beds lined up, you know, really. So it was just another day. A lot of this photo is actually from Find and Connect, but you'll find a lot of photos if you wanted to look at whether they're monuments and the setup of the homes on our website, but mainly on Find and Connect if anybody wants to pursue that. Next slide, please. Institution and foster homes offered no love, no support, no privacy, no empathy, no personal space. Our beds, the linen, bedspreads, clothes, suitcases, shoes were mirror images of each other. Any personal gifts received whilst in institutional care were put into a communal toy room, at least at the home that I was in anyway, at Bajura, and also King Edward. The big girls would bash us if we tried to get our own toys, so we gave up on that. I was 13 and I had gone off to be with a foster mother. I'd had 11 placements from the age of 5 till 13. Some for 3 or 4 months. As I went along, I learned particular strategies, but I did never have any love and things like that. So I didn't know what that was all like. I was 13 in 1964 when it was time, when my foster mother had been given 3 hours notice that I was going to be returned to my own natural mother, somebody I didn't even know. I had never met her, or hadn't met her since I was a child. And I realised, and the only reason a quick decision was made was the fact that my foster mother had gone up to see where are my uniforms. I was starting year of high school. And they were, oh, she can go home. So not, I hope they do things a lot more differently now and give people a little bit of time to adjust. So here I was about to walk out that door, close that door, and then into another chapter of my life and try and forget everything else. The memories that I took away of that home from age 8 until I was 13, and the physical and psychological things that when it took away, was the torture, abuse, and being left with an old man, the husband of my foster mother's girlfriend, who I won't go into for whatever. And not any of my personal gifts were allowed to be taken home with me. Unbeknownst to me at the time, what had happened is that my foster mother had received gifts, whether for my birthday, Christmas, etc., and also monies. And they were put away into a cupboard, and when a special occasion came out, it would go under the Christmas tree to Ellen, you know, with love from Mum. I thought that was coming from my foster mother all those years, and when I went home in that January of '64, and I said to my sister, who had gone home 2 years prior to me, "Oh, my foster mother gave me that. My foster mother gave me that." And she said, "Oh, no, our mum sent that." So, you know, it was really, really a bit sad that I was learning I'd been deceived so much again. On the right of that slide, there's a picture of me just before I went into care, maybe a few months before, and then a picture of me last year. Since 2015, when I retired, I had to retire. I had a breakdown because I attended the Royal Commission into Sexual Abuse of Children to give my accounts of what happened, and then unbeknownst to me, that opened Pandora's box and I was off again. So I had a nervous breakdown. I worked for the Queensland Police Service. You know, police don't have breakdowns and things like that. So it was suggested I leave, which I did. But from 2015, after I relocated back to Sydney, I have had both knees, my left hip, my right shoulder replaced, 6 spinal fusions, 8 titanium rods in my spine, and I have a Medtronic bolt which holds all my back together because my back was broken when they went in to fix me up. My elbows have now deformed into a V from arthritis because I was continually hit with a baseball bat. And there was also, and I think people would remember, I hope they don't remember too much, but we were issued with a government, with a beautiful hairbrush, but unfortunately it was government backed. And so I was belted with that right down my spine all the time. So that eventually did a lot of harm to my body, as well as the baseball bat also as well. I also had my arms tied to a ruler behind my back to straighten my back, unbeknownst to, you know, my foster mother or anybody. I don't think we looked at our spines back in the 50s, but I had quite severe scoliosis in my spine. So she was trying to get me to stand up a lot straighter all the time, and that was her way of doing that. To date, I have never received any compensation. It did go into the hands with the lawyer in 2015. Then I wasn't happy with that lawyer. It's moved over to somebody else from 2019. And then that lawyer got, I think it's slow COVID. So she's not at work a lot. But anyway, moving on. So I haven't received anything yet, but I'm aging very quickly because of these injuries. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So having worked with Peter, as I said, I had to go back and visit all those things and say, what is it that I don't want? And then I can start to develop in my mind what accommodation we'd like. And certainly what I was really resonant on was considering that it was so very, very important that we had a family type setting that wasn't like 100 people, that doesn't look like it's institutional, where all the doors are the same, all the curtains are the same, all the bedspreads are the same. And I really wanted to get away from all of that. And so that's what I wanted to relay to Peter in his role. And I think that his eyes were opened a little bit hearing stories from not only myself, but others that you know, were involved in this project. And I thought, well, I don't want to be abused anymore. And I know we do have a lot of changes and acts and things to protect us. but we still do from time to time see things that have happened. I want my own room for privacy. I don't want to have to share a room. I know if I go to Gosford Hospital, even now, there's 4 people in there, I freeze up. I mean, I know it's not as big, you know, but you try and explain to them that I'm a forgotten Australian. I'm feeling really uncomfortable here. I'm sorry, man. You know, we leave you here. And to me, it makes me very uncomfortable to even go into a room with 4 people. I want to be able to sleep in if I want to, sleep in till 10 o'clock and not be woken up at 6 o'clock for a shower and dressed and pushed out to a main room and left there till morning tea or lunchtime. You know, and I don't want to be ordered around to do. I want to be asked. You know, I want freedom to leave the premises, to come and go as I would like to, within the parameters of the guidelines that are set by, you know, whatever. You know, I don't want to be locked up anymore. I was locked in cupboards, unfortunately, for long periods of time. I don't want to share my personal and private things with people. And it's one thing I said to Peter, you go into a lot of these places in aged care, and apart from a photo and a bedside cabinet, they don't even have like a little display cabinet where they can put their little personal things. And I think that it's important to consider those things. And I don't want to have to share those things with anybody. I want to be able to eat in my own room if I don't feel like I want to go and be marched up to a big dining room. And I don't want to be forced to eat food that is bloody awful, you know, because that's just not on. I want to experience outings and beautiful sunny days and of course, trips to the beach. And I want to have my family visit whenever they want. Now, it was these parameters I thought of in moving forward to what Peter has explained. Unfortunately, we've just gone back the wrong, different way today. But these were the things that I had to go, well, this is what I need, Peter. Smaller areas, different colours into different rooms, not long corridors, you know, etc. And we worked well together along with everybody else. Next slide, please. In closing today, I know Anne always says Elle's never short of anything to have to say, and she's quite right, actually. My children are always telling me to shut up. I would just like to thank everybody for tuning in. It's really, really important, you know, that my role for forgotten Australian care leavers, and I don't care what term you want to use, but it is so passionate that it will be there, and I will be fighting for justice until I take that last breath. So, you know, if there's any groups, whether they're government, entities, anybody out there, I've already addressed places like Meals on Wheels about if they come across forgotten Australians in their community. You know, information and knowledge is just, you know, so important, you know, and the only way that we can understand, that people can understand where we came from, is to talk to us and ask us, you know. My lived experience in saying all of this and concluding for the day, and my details can be gotten by Anne at any time, my lovely CEO. My lived experience, I must say, may have shaped me, but they will never define me. And I am not a victim, I am a survivor. And I thank you so much for your time today. Finish, no more slides.
What can I say? I'm going to give you a round of applause, and I know everyone who's on today will be clapping as well. Thank you for presenting such a beautiful story of your life. Not all beautiful, but I think you've made it. You've changed it, and I think your advocacy and your passion and your activism is just making such a difference. So on behalf of everyone here today, thank you, Al. I really appreciate your efforts. I know how brave you are, and I acknowledge that you are so brave to share your story. But I also wanted to acknowledge the contribution that you have made to this design competition. I don't think you slept for 2 weeks by the number of detailed plans, detailed suggestions.
Mm.
I think, Nelly, that you and Peter should be doing your PhDs together because you've got all the material and the hard work. I
Mm.
do also want to acknowledge the other people that are on the line today who were co-designers, who came into Peter's practice in the CBD or joined us from around the countryside. It was a great team effort, a great collaboration.
It
So
was a
thank
great, it was a great team effort. And I mean, even with the designer, because as I said, there's nothing worse than going into a room and seeing that room are all the same. Change the curtains, let people have their own bedspreads, let doonas, whatever. But, you know, just put some homeliness into everything. And poor Peter, he had because I'm an ideas person and I love legislation, which is crazy, and I love design, and I love giving ideas. And I think Peter had his full after each meeting.
Well, thank you both, and particularly Al for your presentation. Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
your
much.
kind words, Anne. Thank you.
Now, it is time for afternoon break. I'm going to make it 5 minutes instead of 10, so we can catch up on some time. So stay online. I believe everyone's going to stay online. Just go on mute, and we'll give everyone a 5-minute break before we start the rest of the afternoon. And I'm going to kick off. It's my honour to introduce our next speaker and indeed the facilitator for this next session as well. Many people on the line know Margot well from her great work that she's done over many, many years advocating for forgotten Australians and also in, I guess, highlighting the needs to consider the past experiences that individuals had as children. And I can highly recommend everyone go out and buy Margot's book. It's a great read. And again, very brave, Margot, to put your life in writing. And I know, though, that it's made a significant difference for many people. Margot is a board member of Tuart Place and has made a significant contribution also to the work of the National Roundtable through her great voluntary efforts in assisting with the Care Navigator trial that was a unique pilot we did a couple of years ago. And always there on a subcommittee, always there on any area that needs a hand and a dedicated hand. Margot's skills are always offered, and we really appreciate that, Margot. It's my pleasure to hand over to you for today's session and to do an opening address to this session. Thank you, Margot.
Thank you, Anne. Nagala Kadich Nunga Mort, Kayan Kadak Nijabuja. I come to you today from Wajak Noongar land, which is in Western Australia, and I pay respects to and want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and the lands on which we all meet. My name's Margot O'Byrne and I grew up in Care in Queensland and I was in St Vincent's Orphanage in Nudgee. And I just want to acknowledge Elle's fabulous presentation. Good on you, Elle, you're amazing. And also to acknowledge all the other forgotten Australians. I know we've got a lot of people watching here at Tuart Place, so great that you're all here. I can hear them cheering. And also the others all around Australia. It's never easy to sit through these sessions, so thanks for being here and hanging in there. And like Elle said, if this bit feels too much, then just go and get yourself a cup of tea or something else. So those of us who grew up in care, I won't, Elle's actually covered a lot of what I might say, but I just want to say that although we came from all parts of Australia and had many different experiences, and particularly a lot of people here in Western Australia were former child migrants. So not only were they in care, but they were also sent out here from England and Ireland and Malta. And so never got to see their families again. But the thing that we all share in common is that our dignity was taken away, and our freedom of movement, and any choices that we had about anything. At the time when we should have been running and playing with our chosen friends, all of our choices were gone. So as we age and we are looking at what's in the future for us, we don't want to go back to those restricted movements. We don't want to go back to having our clothes chosen for us. We don't want to sit next to people that we don't like or don't choose to sit next to. We don't want to eat meals that we ate for years when we were children, which were tasteless and not enough or repetitive. We don't want to shower at a time when we're told to. We don't want to have people impose in our personal space and make health choices for us. We don't want any of this regimentation. Just if one of these events happened again, either in home care or in medical care, as well as in residential care, so it can be in any of those things, it can easily trigger for us a memory of this indignity. So if we look like we're not appreciating or responding to your questions and suggestions, we may be trying to quell our inner distressed child. Or we might be covering up for the limited ability we have to read or to understand complicated language because we missed out on so much schooling. So please respect the path that each of us has to travel as we age. And please check your assumptions and remember to listen to what we're asking for. Thank you. So I'd like to now introduce our first speaker for this afternoon's session, Brian Lipman. So Brian Lipman, AM, is the Chief Executive Officer and the founder of Winteringham, a not-for-profit welfare company employing more than 1,000 people. They provide an extensive range of innovative, high-quality, residential, community-based and outreach services to elderly men and women, most of whom are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Winteringham is the largest provider of aged care for the elderly homeless in Australia. Brian was awarded the Order of Australia for his work with the elderly homeless and has received the Aged and Community Care Australia's National Individual Award for his contribution. The Rockefeller Foundation invited Brian to join 16 other homelessness experts from around the world to attend a roundtable meeting in Italy. And in 2011, the United Nations awarded Winteringham the prestigious Habitat Scroll of Honour. In 2012, Brian was invited by the OECD to join an international panel of experts on integrated services and housing in Paris. And in 2015, he was awarded the Melburnian of the Year. Brian has worked with the elderly homeless people for nearly 40 years. Brian, we're absolutely honoured to have you here today.
Brian, would you be able to just press your start video so everyone can see? And thank you, Brian. Welcome on board.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land, but I would also like to acknowledge Elle and Margot and other forgotten Australians, but particularly those two women's story. We've had a lot to do with forgotten Australians over the years, not so much in Western Australia, but I have deep respect for the work that you've done. I guess I want to talk about Wintringham, but maybe we go to the next slide. There are commonalities between homelessness and forgotten Australians, and in fact, throughout the world, it's acknowledged that one of the major drivers into homelessness is institutional care of some sort. So what's happening in Australia to so many of you and your colleagues and friends is not unusual from an international perspective. So there are similarities, but they're not the same. Not all forgotten Australians become homeless. Not all homeless people are forgotten Australians, but there are some commonalities. And the types of issues that those two women raised are exactly the types of issues that we've grappled with for a very long time. Next slide, please. So while I'm going to be talking about Wintringham, some of these stories will relate to your work, but they'll all relate in the sense that what we've tried to do is take the aged care industry into a space where it was never designed. And that's exactly the same type of issues that you people face. Next slide. So when I moved out of the homeless world into aged care, it was a culture shock. I was only in my 30s. If there's something that corresponds to truth and normality in the homeless world, is that most people are left-wing, they're pretty radical, and they want change, and they want change yesterday. In the aged care industry, it's almost exactly the opposite. When I arrived in aged care in the 80s, I found it deeply conservative, very controlling of clients, residents, and resistance to change. So Wintringham was a reaction to that, I suppose. Next slide, please. The aged care industry was designed for very different types of people than it was designed for our people. But we have demonstrated it is possible to create a service system within aged care. Next slide. So from my memory, this is what an typical aged care client would look like in Australia. All service systems have to have an ideal which they design a service around. And this person is 85 years old. She's middle class. She's expectant of services. She's got a lovely family, and she's my mum, or was my mum. Next slide. And this is the type of client that Wintringham works with. Prematurely aged, usually 20 years younger, sometimes 30 years younger than mainstream aged care. Invariably working class, sometimes limited education. We've had many people at Wintringham who are illiterate. Very reluctant to accept services, primarily out of dignity, the resistance to change, and the little or no family supports at all. Next slide. This is the place where I started working. It was a night shelter for homeless people. It was the largest night shelter in Australia. It had 300 beds. It was in Victoria. It was unusual for most night shelters in that it had males and females, but 90% were male. Into that area was acts of wanton kindness, but appalling acts of violence. People were routinely bashed. They were raped, male and female. There were murders, there were bashings, that people were thrown out those windows. I show all these photos and a lot more to my new staff whenever they arrive, and I always ask them to imagine what it was like to live there if you were frail and elderly. And a lot of these people who live in this building were frail and elderly. When my parents got very frail, I had to go out and get aged care for them. I knew nothing about aged care, and I found, to my delight, how good aged care was in Australia. So I therefore tried to get my guys out of this night shelter into aged care. And I didn't make one placement. Not one aged care service provider would take one placement of my elderly clients. So in a fit of madness, I said, okay, well, I'll build my own. And in 1985, I made that decision and started Wintringham. The first 2 years, I was the only employee, but we've grown a lot since then. Next slide. So this photo is very similar to what Elstad, isn't it? This is exactly the types of conditions that homeless people live in, where they can be, instead of being children, they're grown adults. And with that comes acts of violence and unsupervised mayhem at times for those clients who've lived there. Next slide. This is in the Osnan House, which was St Vincent. Well, these buildings are now closed, I might say, but that's a toilet block, no doors, no privacy at all. One thing that I noticed about night shelters, homeless persons' night shelters, were exactly what Margot said before, is that all dignity was routinely stripped from all the clients, and it was deliberately done. It wasn't a byproduct of the service. It was deliberately done, in my view, to make people submissive. This sense of deserving poor and undeserving poor was alive and well in those years, and I distressed to say, still is alive in certain places. Next slide. This is the wheelchair access to the Salvation Army's night shelter. I personally carried people up and down those steps at times. Again, doesn't exist anymore. This is not a particular argument against the Salvation Army. It was routinely serviced throughout homeless service systems throughout the world that I saw. Yep, next slide. These are some of the poor guys who have lived in these shelters, often mental health issues, psychiatric issues, poverty issues, abandonment, despair. Like Earl, I'll refrain from some of the stories behind these two guys, partly for the reasons we've run out of time, but also they're too distressing to talk about. But these people have lived terrible lives. Yes, next slide. This is inside the building. This is a long story, so I'll obviously cut it very short. But when Wintringham first started, I was told that we probably wouldn't be financially viable because aged care relies on accommodation bonds. But I eventually did talk the government into the minister into letting us open a new facility. We were told that the first, one of the ways that I was going to resolve the financial viability issue, because in those days you got more money for incontinence. So I said to my very first manager, you must choose the first 30 people from Gordon House who go to the Wintringham to be all incontinent because we get more money. Turns out they weren't incontinent. And the reasons they weren't incontinent was they were incontinent in this building because they had to go to a communal bathroom where people were routinely bashed or robbed. At Wintringham, they had a private ensuite. Simple solution to a problem, but again, shows you the horror of having to live in a place like this. Next slide. These photos always distress me because these guys, probably the only person that loves them in the world is an animal, and yet that animal, not only are they unable to care for it, because anyone who's got an animal knows how expensive they are through dogs, through vets and other food, etc. But they are keeping the people homeless because no homeless agency, or very few homeless agencies, will allow animals. So Wintringham made a decision very early on that you can have an animal. Obviously, in a 30-bed place, we can't have 30 Alsatians, but we all can have resolve problems about pets. And certainly if a pet is causing a person to remain out in the streets, we will endeavour to look after that pet as well. Next slide. These are the types of facilities that Wintringham builds. All of the issues that Margot and Elle described, Wintringham adheres to. In other words, privacy and dignity. One of the issues I do want to mention, though, before I wrap up, is that the aged care reforms is all about quality of care. And I actually object to that. I think when I get old and frail, I'll want a quality of life, of which quality of care is a component. So when I get to this age where I need care, I want to enjoy the last few years of my life. And part of that enjoyment will be that my care needs are met. But a whole lot of other issues that are non-nursing related should also be addressed, such as laughter, love, companionship, all the issues that I think I heard Margot and Elle talking about, which Wintringham believes passionately in. We have over 100 recreation therapists or workers, all designed to make the life of our clients and our residents fun and happy. Next slide. Our buildings are all soft. They've won architectural awards. A lot of wood, if we can use them. Defensible space, and I call that a veranda. So when I go in to see someone, I'm not going straight into his bedroom, which he might be, that might be compromising for him, or he doesn't like me being in his bedroom. He's got an area where I can stand and call out to him and knock on his door. He can choose to invite me in or come out into the veranda. It's also a place where he can have a smoke and not smoke in his room, which then our young staff have to inhale his smoke. So that's all sorts of good reasons to sit outside in the fresh air. It's healthy too. Next slide. We have a lot of water facilities, encouraging people to go outside all the time. I remember when I visited my mum once, all the residents were standing by a window and they said to me, "Oh, it looks like it's a nice day outside, dear." I then went to Wintringham and all the residents were outside and people were running around getting suntan lotions and hats. A small little anecdote, but again demonstrates that why shouldn't the oldies sit outside just like I want to sit outside? Why should you be locked inside? Yep. Next slide. This is another amusing example, but also poignant. Cowboy was an ex-bull rider and rodeo rider, and very frail in these last few days of his life. We brought a horse into the nursing home. It's the first nursing home for homeless people, we think, in the world, but certainly in Australia. And we brought the horse in through a little Shetland pony, in through the building, hoping the accreditors didn't turn up, and followed him with a dustpan and brush. And Cowboy was able to stroke a horse on his last. He died the next day, so it was a lovely little gesture for him. Yeah, next slide. That's all. So I guess one of the finally things I wanted to say is that, in the words of my wife, Wintringham is a home to stumps, and it's a home, and it should be everything that you associate with a home. Not everything in all homes is happy, but a good loving home, you try to resolve all those issues, and certainly it should be a place where people don't work, but people live. So I can remember giving instructions to our first architect to say, I want a building that is hostile to visitors. And that wasn't meant to say we didn't want visitors, but we wanted visitors to realize they've come into a home and not a place where people work. So it's a combination of all of those types of issues, but social justice and ethical principles of care have driven Wintringham for 40 years or 35 years and will continue, I am sure. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Brian. What an amazing presentation. I wonder if you'd like to be the Minister for Aged Care, perhaps. I think we would.
I would love that. I would
we would
love
change
that.
things significantly. And thank you very much for your years of work and your years of responding as a human to the needs of the most distressed people that we have in our community. Everything that you've presented today is a big challenge for all of us to see how it could be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speakers this afternoon are both Margaret Fisher and Mel Causer. Margaret Fisher has taken on the role as the care finder at Tuart Place, which is where in Western Australia, in Fremantle, a community support service which has been operating for the past 10 years here. Following the success of the pilot aged care navigation trial, Marg came to us with a lot of experience as an aged care navigator and assessor of the My Aged Care program. She previously worked with allied health teams in Sir Charles Gardner Hospital, Fremantle Hospital and Rockingham General Hospital. Marg looks forward to helping other people navigate the aged care system and find support services to improve their quality of life. Mel Causer is an extraordinary advocate for forgotten Australians and is dedicated to obtaining the best quality support and care that individuals need and deserve. She has a high level of dedication to her role as stakeholder engagement in the Care Finder program at MICA projects at Lotus Place. Lotus Place is a MICA support service and resource centre for people who experienced abuse in institutional settings, including out-of-home care as children. Mel has a Bachelor of Nursing and a Diploma in Community Management and has worked in the not-for-profit sector for over 25 years. She is well recognised for her passion to achieve better outcomes for individuals and her attempts to reform the aged and community care sector. Welcome, Margaret, and welcome, Mel.
Thank you, Margot, and hello, everyone. I'm going to speak about, I've chosen two of the challenges that I've encountered in the last year working at Tuart Place and delivering the Care Finder program. But first, I thought I'd take a very short time and just explain the Care Finder program because it is fairly new and it might not be familiar to everybody in the audience. It's funded by the Australian Department of Health and Aged Care through the local primary health alliances. It's a national program, and as care finders, we provide free, confidential and impartial help to older Australians who need to be eligible for aged care services, and they also need to have a need for what we call intensive support. So onto the couple of challenges that I mentioned. The first challenge is a fairly obvious one, but I think it's a very important one. And that is, how do we find those older care leavers living out in the community who may not be connected to a place like Tuart Place or a care leaver service? Here at Tuart Place, we interact with hundreds of care leavers every year. And we do that by our drop-in service where we get to meet our care leavers face-to-face and have those in-person conversations. But we also put out a lot of information via social media, by sending out leaflets, by putting up posters, sending out newsletters. Also, we have, a very strong word of mouth information system that happens amongst our care leaver communities. But I think there'll always be those older care leavers living in the community who, for whatever reason, can't connect with the information that we put out there. It might be that they have literacy challenges, they don't have a phone, or perhaps they just don't have people around them who can tell them about services like Tuart Place and about the Care Finder programs. So that's going to be an ongoing challenge, and I think we're going to have to continue to look at different ways of trying to connect with those older care leavers. The second challenge I wanted to talk about is one that's been touched on by both Isolde and by Brian, and that's about the lack of what we call specialisation with our aged care providers. So specialisation, it's designed to help older Australians find more reliable information when they're trying to choose an aged care provider. It's aimed at helping those older Australians from diverse backgrounds and life experiences. And when we think of specialisation, it's like an extra qualification that an aged care provider undertakes. And it means that these service providers, they have aged care staff with extra training and experience and skills to work with those special needs groups within the aged care system. There's 9 categories of specialisations or 9 special needs groups that are recognised within the aged care system. And the ones that I look for, obviously care leavers or forgotten Australians, but the other ones, and Brian touched on this, there's this overlap of some of these special needs groups. So the other ones that I look for as well are those people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, those people who are financially and socially disadvantaged, and of course our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So to give you a little bit of an idea, when I'm working with one of my care leaver clients and we're perhaps looking for a home care package, we might have a choice of 40, 50, 60 different home care providers. It's a wonderful choice, but what we want to do is try and narrow that down. And if I can find an aged care provider with a specialisation, that helps enormously to know that that client can be matched more closely with an aged care provider who can meet their needs in a safe way. Isolde mentioned that there's no aged care providers with specialisation with care leavers and forgotten Australians, and I've not been able to find any specialisations amongst our service providers here in the other categories. So the homeless category, the financially and socially disadvantaged category, or with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So I really hope that that changes soon. I'm going to leave it there now and hand over to Mel in Queensland, who's going to talk a little bit more about the challenges that she's faced.
Thanks a lot, Margaret. I'd like to reiterate, first off, I'd like to say that I use the term forgotten Australians, but you know, I acknowledge that in the health community and aged care sector, this group of people are adults who are in institutional or out of home care as children, are more commonly called care leavers. But for most of the people I support and I work with over here, forgotten Australians is generally the term that they refer, and that also of course includes child migrants. I'd like to reiterate Margaret's comments about forgotten Australians. Older forgotten Australians are very hidden in the community unless they're connected to Lotus Place or Tuart Place or Open Place or Wattle Place. I find people who don't want to talk about their past because they were made to feel ashamed about being in care. So it can be a very uncomfortable thing for them to admit. So I think it's really important that the question is asked, and it needs to be on the assessment forms, and that workers have appropriate training so that they understand the impact of asking, and they can let people know. They can say something like, you know, we understand that because of your time in care, there may be things that you're concerned about with aged care, and we'd like to know how we can work with you to help you feel safe and in control. Because, you need to have an understanding of why you're asking that question in the first place. Another point is, and I don't know that how widespread this is, but around Brisbane, we found that there is quite a wait for services. And so for people who are in care as children, as everyone would understand, especially after today's presentations by Margot and Elle, that they're very reluctant to have aged care support. And so the care finders of those of us, that work with forgotten Australians, we take the time to build trust and assure the people that we work with that services are different these days, and that they, will be listened to and remain in control of their lives. And we support them through the process of getting assessed, and then there's no services for them, often for a considerable period of time. And that can be hard on people when this has been such a difficult process and they're psyching themselves up for it. And also it's common for there to be intergenerational trauma in the families of the people who are in care as children, and consequently they may not have family support at home. I'm generalising, it certainly doesn't apply to everybody. But when you combine this with the lack of trust, many forgotten Australians understandably they often very isolated when they're older. So having access to a personal safety alarm, it can be really important when somebody's really isolated, and it can take months as part of this service for to get an OT assessment to enable this to happen. So that's an issue, along with generally waiting for services. For forgotten Australians, home is a safe place, and usually strangers aren't welcome into their homes without being invited and trusted. So I understand, and having aged care workers who change without notice and are strangers coming into the homes is really hard for people, especially since workers invariably have no awareness or trauma-informed practices. Now, I understand this is a major issue for aged care workers, and I'm not telling anyone new, especially when there's such a lack of workers in the sector at the moment. But it's really important that workers that go in have some training so they understand the impact when they go in, and they can tread very gently on those first few visits. So I just feel concerned that maybe the changes that are happening in the aged care sector around specialisation and support, need to be ramped up a bit, because this is a group of people who really deserve our respect, and to ensure that towards the end of their lives, they are treated with dignity. So thank you very much. And thank you, Elle and Margot, for for the things that you said today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. That was a great presentation. And thanks, Marg, for your wonderful presentation as well. And thanks both of you and your organisations for the incredible work that you do every day for all of us. Now I'd like to hand back to Anne Livingston for the moment.
Thanks, Margot. Great presentations by Mel and Margaret there. Really appreciate their input. The National Roundtable has been coordinating our Care Finders for Forgotten Australians community of practice. And I just wanted to take a minute to really hone in on some of the dilemmas that that community of practice have found in every state and territory where dedicated care finders are there for forgotten Australians. It's been a great advancement, I think, when we first got to half-time positions in the Care Navigators trial, and now I think we're counting up to about 5 dedicated positions in the Care Finders trial. However, what is happening is that in the PASS trial, it was clearly noted that people were being navigated to nowhere. And now we're finding in this second trial that in care finders, forgotten Australians are finding no care. This has also been reinforced by the specialisation verification project that the Department of Health and Ageing have run, and we really appreciate that has indicated that there are no services that meet the verification specialisation goalposts, and I would contend that the bars that people have to reach are very minimal standards of responsive, consumer-directed and individualised funding. We also contend that if you could get the care right for forgotten Australians, you probably get the care right for every Australian. And certainly that came out in our design project. We also, some of you would remember, did a survey way back in 2021 where we took a random sample in a discrete Brisbane South area, geographical area. That was in response to forgotten Australians and their families telling us that all these people said that they specialised in providing services to care leavers under the Aged Care Act. But the reality was that when they approached those services, many just didn't even know what a care leaver, what a forgotten Australian was. So we, with the help of some students, we did do a random survey, and we found in that survey that none of the providers who indicated that they were specialist service providers actually even knew what care leavers and forgotten Australians were. And I think that we've now had that verified very transparently with the specialisation verification. I hear the stories in the community of practice for care finders that false hope is being, I guess, given to forgotten Australians, in that being given a care finder implies that you can find the care and that you will be able to access something. The reality that you've heard from Margaret and Mal is that at best it's a compromise in the care. At worst, there is no care. And we can do better than that. We believe that it's really unfair and unjust and misleading for care finders, for care leavers and forgotten Australians to think that in the current environment, they are going to be able to receive specialised, appropriate and tailored care. So the Roundtable believes that we can do a lot better than that. And we call on government and decision makers to really look seriously at this. We welcome that you funded one project to one organisation, but more could be done. We have a submission in the writing around the need for some pooled funding to allow care leavers, forgotten Australians, to access better care and support initially. But we also believe that there's a lot more work to be done about a uniformed model of care, an enhanced workforce, and a more responsive and targeted approach to better care or care for forgotten Australians care leavers. So I just put a bit of a be alarmed and alert. We have got a strategy, and we're working up that strategy to influence a change to that. Thank you, Margot. I appreciate the time. Back over to you.
Thanks very much, Anne. It's good to get the actual personal delivery experience and then what the implications are in the big picture. So thank you. Our next speaker this afternoon, I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Philip Mendes and Ms. Sarah Morris from Monash University. Professor Mendes is a Director of Social Inclusion and Social Policy Research Unit in the Department of Social Work at Monash University. He has been researching the adult lives of those who grew up in out-of-home care for nearly 25 years. Ms. Sarah Morris is a social worker and early career academic who has lived experience of out-of-home care. Sarah is currently a research assistant in the Department of Social Work and has a passion for incorporating lived experience with her professional practice, whether that be contributing to academic literature and projects or working collaboratively with organisations to create programs that are trauma-informed and therapeutically aligned. Welcome, Philip and Sarah, to today's event.
Thank you, Margot, and hello, everyone. And next slide, thank you. So our study seeks to better understand Australians who as children spent time in orphanages, institutions, children's homes, group homes, or foster care between 1950 and the late 1980s. And as we know, many of those individuals suffered a lot of childhood adversity that has had a long-term impact throughout their adulthood. So the main aim of our project is to understand their needs as they age and consider accessing aged care services. Next slide, thank you. So our research project is affiliated with the National Centre for Healthy Ageing based at Monash University in Melbourne, and receives funding from the Commonwealth Government of Australia through the Community Health and Hospitals Grant Scheme. We've got 5 team members, myself, Dr. Susan Badawi, a Social Work Department colleague, Lena Turnbull, our research assistant, Sarah Morris, my co-presenter today, and the Care Leavers Australasia Network clan as a key research partner. Next slide, thank you. Next slide, thank you. Yeah. So we have really attempted to embed lived experience into this research project throughout, particularly in the methodology. It is co-designed with CLAN, a body that would be well known pretty much to everybody here. And we wanted to ensure through CLAN's involvement that the voices of care leavers were embedded in every stage of our research. And the team also has a key lived experience research assistant in Sarah Morris, who's played a key role in both planning and completing our data collection. So next slide, thank you. So we've got about 5 main expected outcomes, adding to what is at the moment a rather limited existing knowledge regarding the actual aged care system experiences and needs of care leavers, advancing new and innovative strategies to assist care leavers entering aged care, supporting aged care providers to develop policies to both identify care leavers and require training to meet their particular needs, supporting the development of a specific national aged care action plan for care leavers, and developing a best practice model of care. Next slide, thank you. So what have we completed to date? We've got 3 main outputs. We've completed a scoping review of literature, mainly local literature, interestingly, very little international literature in this area that's been recently submitted to a peer-reviewed journal. We've advanced a quantitative survey of care leavers to establish key priorities for aged care services development. And thirdly, we've advanced interviews with care leavers to achieve deeper understanding of their lived experience and those aspects of their experiences that influence particular needs within aged care services and settings. Next slide, thank you. So to date, from our literature review, we've got 7 main findings, which I'll go through pretty quickly. One, that care leavers absolutely no doubt have a very real fear of reinstitutionalisation and re-traumatisation if placed in an aged care setting. 2, they want to remain in their own home and receive in-home support. 3, key components of aged care support can be potentially triggering around lack of flexibility, lack of privacy, communal living, a whole lot of the features that a number of speakers have already talked about today. 4, they can be exposed to other triggers that remind them of childhood adversity in care, such as particular holidays, foods, episodes, religious symbols, and so on. 5, workforce issues can provide a real challenge to implementing trauma-informed care. There is a lot of staff turnover, skill disparity, cultural and language barriers, and generally a difficulty in meeting complex behaviour needs with limited resources. 6, lack of family support for many care leavers can be for them an additional barrier to navigating aged care programs, as well as the prohibitive cost, the lack of services or information about services, and the lack of transport. And 7, a strong preference for care that prioritises their autonomy and does not force them to divulge or repeat their life story unnecessarily. So next slide and over to Sarah. Thank you. You better unmute, Sarah.
I thought I did. Apologies. Thank you, Margot and Phil, for the introduction. Now that I've hit unmute. Crafting this survey was a journey of co-design and collaborative efforts. Early on during this process, we identified 2 crucial elements. Firstly, older care leavers exhibit distinct traits that pose recruitment challenges. These include limited computer knowledge, literacy obstacles, a general mistrust in government and related institution, and the propensity to stay under the radar. Secondly, numerous key stakeholders have found a profound interest and vast experience in conducting research advocacy for change and working within this field. These factors played an instrumental role in shaping our approach to survey content creation and participant recruitment. Our goal was to foster a more consultative environment that encourages collaboration at every step of the process. Next, thank you. Here we outline the process of developing the survey, which involved establishing connections with stakeholders through various pathways and conducting consultations with different key groups, including lived experience researchers and advocates, non-profit organisations, and researchers. Key ideas and concepts relevant to the survey were informed by the data analysis derived from these consultations. This established a feedback loop which informed the survey structure and content. Thanks to key stakeholders, the final survey was then proofed before being distributed to participants through the use of community newsletters and networking channels. Next slide, please. Key messages from the initial surveys and interviews found that most participants do not consider aged care to be an option for them. As a result, this led to some areas of the survey to be skipped and some very brief interviews. The following are just a few of the quotes taken from participants, painting a stark picture of the reality of our ageing care leaver population. Due to time, I won't go through them all. But these rather graphic statements highlight a shared view that aged care in its current state is often viewed as a death sentence. Next slide, please. Thanks to the amazing partnership with Lotus Place in Brisbane and a lovely Mel, who kindly organised gauging participant interest, coordinating staff and sessions. It was through this partnership which gave an incredible opportunity for myself to go and meet around 20 forgotten Australians and former child migrants in person, each sharing their wealth of knowledge and experience, but also stories of horrific trauma, state-sanctioned child slave labour, neglect and abuse. Engagement with the older care leaver demographic presented with many challenges prior to the Lotus Place visit. For example, limited literacy and numeracy or illiterate, difficulties navigating technology, poor physical health, untrusting of government. And these barriers were combated by engaging in this in-person format, utilising lived experience research of myself to conduct both assisted surveys and recorded interviews. The response from this group was far greater than we initially anticipated, completing a total of 15 interviews and 20 assisted surveys stemming from this visit, and a further 10 participants who had expressed interest in participating in the study. I'll skip through that. Participants echoed feelings of remaining forgotten, unseen, unheard, alone and isolated. Some shared their stories of hard to access services, confusion around NDIS and my aged care, lack of autonomy and or paternalistic practices and or policies. The majority of Brisbane participants resided in government housing, which oftentimes appeared inappropriate given their age, frailty and falls risk. For example, living in a small second-level apartment while having difficulties ambulating due to poor health, the size and location of premises, surrounding demographic, so which place vulnerable individuals at risk of being abused or even extorted financially, as one participant had shared. Considerations for older care leavers within the LGBTIQ+ community was also found to be an emerging theme within the interviews. Their unique trauma experiences from criminalisation and active persecution for their sexuality or gender identities, creating yet another layer of complexity due to wider social conventions that further ingrained fear of imprisonment. Some individuals shared how the impacts of institutionalised child sexual abuse warped their sense of sexuality and identity. Many participants shared their views on the burdens they faced when becoming parents themselves. These struggles due to attachment difficulties stemming from the trauma and abuse they sustained while in an institution. Inability to bond and or feel love for their own children, or fears that their own children may be abused by others within their communities. The visit to Lotus Place aided in data collection and provided more meaningful engagement with participants. Upon returning to Melbourne, the previous challenges to engagement appear to have returned. Telephone surveys was once again an arduous, time-consuming process, this highlighting the importance for face-to-face engagement with this group. And I'll pass back over to Philip. Thank you.
And next slide, thank you. So yeah, final step, sorry, not final steps, further steps. So we're hoping to recruit more survey participants. We want to continue connecting with key stakeholders in the area and commence some focus groups. We'll continue our interviews, preferably face-to-face, as Sarah mentioned, and also as we progress to, I guess, finalising our interviews and focus groups and surveys this year, then to connect with key aged care providers who can support the data collection process further. And next slide, thank you. Next slide, thank you, if there is a next slide. Yep, so we're really keen to connect further, and there are the key contacts, particularly for Sarah and Lena. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
And thank you very much, both Philip and Sarah. That was a most interesting presentation, and we wish you well with the rest of your research. And as one of my mentors says, if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. So I think it's really important that you're doing the research work that will inform our ability to advocate for all care leavers. So thank you very much. And don't forget, if you haven't taken part in the survey yet, that you can, I'm sure there'll be a link included in this, and please encourage others. If you're still looking for more participants, Philip, then let's encourage others to take part in that. So thank you. And our final speaker for this afternoon is Ms. Rebecca Moran. I'm very pleased to introduce you, Beck. Beck is a criminologist who focuses on complex trauma, particularly the trauma of child sexual abuse. Her PhD explores survivor missions and the ways that people healing from trauma might find recognition and drive social change through social action and public testimony. Becca's interested in the personal and the political, as well as social justice, dignity, service reform, and recognition for marginalised groups, including trauma survivors and older adults. So this afternoon, we're going to see Beck's amazing film. Beck, can I invite you to introduce us to that?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to be very quick because due to time, so I'm going to try and condense everything into a minute or two. I still would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking today from Wajak Noongar Boodja and acknowledge ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge the forgotten Australians who have shared their experiences today in this forum, and also for the film that you'll see in a moment. If not for the generosity and the courage of people sharing their sacred stories, I think we would struggle to learn so quickly what it is that we need to work towards on the issue of aged care in particular. A little bit of background on the film. It was funded by my role as a research fellow or lived experience research fellow at the Big Anxiety Research Centre at University of New South Wales. And I also received some seed funding from the Aging Futures Institute at UNSW. And I received invaluable support from Tuart Place as well in helping me to access participants and to use the space there, and just for having me around for the last few years since I started my PhD and spoke to some forgotten Australians early on. There's one thing that I really want to say about the film, that what I want to have captured and that I want people to take away is something about humanity and dignity with these people. That these are individuals with unique interior lives and unique experiences and unique needs, and I really hope that the film goes some way to sort of, you know, give a voice to those people and for their views and needs to be heard in a way that possesses dignity, humanity, and is focused on trauma-informed practice. I would love for people to take this film and use it and share it as much as you like. I'm not in this for credit. I'd like to produce a public resource that can be used in training packages, in awareness raising, and that's really what I tried to do, was to create something that was of a size, shape and form that it could be quite readily consumed by people. As others have mentioned, there's too many people in Australia don't know what a forgotten Australian refers to. So this is a film it's really just an opener, and as I've been listening today, I've been thinking I need to make part 2 where we get more detailed, but I hope that this can be a useful resource for some of you. One final point is that a bit of a content warning, that there are mentions of abuse, as in people saying I was abused, but it doesn't get any more detailed than that. So I don't want you to worry that there's going to be detailed disclosures of abuse experiences. It doesn't go into that much detail. And I think that's all I need to say. Please do get in touch with me if you've got any questions, or if you, and I hope that we can post the link to the film in the chat so that everyone can copy and share as much as you like. Thank you.
So today I'm going to take a tour of a facility I think I might like to not retire into, but it's independent living like my house, but without all the hassles.
I'm here today to go through aged care to see what it's like. I don't really expect much, but I'd like to see the truth from the staff, the inmates, people that live there, what it's like. Feeling pretty nervous about it because I've never sort of been to this place before.
It's got to have things that I can do so I don't feel isolated, you know, but at the same time it's got to be safe.
Hopefully I'll get a good impression. Just wait and see what happens.
I'm apprehensive. I feel like you're going to jail. Sorry.
I was very, very young when I was placed in Benmore. My parents' marriage broke down, and in those days you weren't allowed to live with your father, and my mother couldn't look after us. So we got thrown to the wolves. Police came and took us away and put us into Benmore through welfare. It was pretty bad. The abuse was horrendous. We were kids, we didn't know what was wrong. Sorry. And the abuse started very slowly. First of all, it started in the bathroom. And when you tried to do anything, you got a hidey, you got the belt. And you also got locked in a little room. They made sure you were punished. And I used to be so scared, but there was nothing I could do. But we were sexually abused all the time, all of us. Every single female, no matter what age. So the home was a horrible place. I was hungry, cold, abused, unwanted. You never had anything. It was bad, really bad. I would never ever expect anybody to look after me. If I can't look after myself, I wouldn't expect anyone to. If they thought I need to go into a home or somewhere, I would rather die. I'd stop taking my medication. I would not tell anybody I stopped taking it because I know that if I don't take my medication, I will have a stroke or a heart attack. The reason I wanted to have a look through the aged care, I don't think there's any place that could ever make people feel safe. No aged care, no matter what you do, you've got human nature, you're dealing with different people you don't know. You can't put someone in there that's never known a bad day in their life and expect them to understand. People that have suffered trauma, sometimes they're very irrational and they react in different ways, and I don't think they'd be able to cope with it. It takes special people to do that. My main worry about care is it's like being young again. You lose your freedom. You want to go out, you can't do it unless they say so. You're locked in at night, those doors are locked. They have keypads, they can undo those doors. You can't. I was abused in the home. I don't want to go into a nursing home and stand a chance of maybe being abused again. There's no guarantee that I wouldn't be. I'd rather not put myself in that position to be hurt or abused in any form. Okay, well, that was an experience and a half. I didn't expect that. We were made welcome, very welcome at first. The lady was really lovely. We waited for another lady to take us through. She didn't mind. We got shown the rooms, the bedroom where you stay. Very claustrophobic, panicked a bit there. Wanted to get out of the room pretty fast. Showed you where you had your meals. They all seemed really good. The people that live there seem happy. There's arts and crafts and jigsaws, TV, very community minded. Certainly not what I expected there after you see on TV what does happen in a nursing home. Asked about the trauma, do they have anyone that helps people with trauma in the past? And they don't, which is a bit of a worry because a lot of people have suffered a lot of trauma and really need the understanding and the support of that. I asked the question, are you allowed to go to the shops? You have to be supervised. I can understand that, but you've got to book it. You can't just say, you know, well, I'm going to the shops. I can understand where they're coming from, but I have to have my freedom. I have to be able to do what I want. I was suppressed for so long, I couldn't do what I wanted. In the home, after the home, I had no choice. I had to do what people wanted me to do, and I don't want that ever again. I have to live by my rules or die. Simple as that.
I am a care leaver, and it deeply affected me. I think I was 4 years old when I went into institution and come out a couple of weeks short of my 18th birthday. I was separated from all my siblings. I think I saw my mother once when I was 8 years old for about an hour. I never saw her again. It was a children's care home. It was up in the hills, out of sight, out of mind. And so, you know, we were orphans. Yeah, I was abused badly, and you were always told that you would never amount to anything. You know, you were an orphan and no one cared about you. And after a while you started to believe it, you know, and then of course when you get to a certain age they say you've got to go, and they just throw you out. Anyway, I got out alive. I got out alive, I don't know how, but I did. I took this, I was feeling depressed, and I went camping and I came across this in the bush. Well, my depression just left me when I saw that. It's my dose of reality, going out in the bush, just seeing things as they are, as you were intended to see them, yeah. It's beautiful. The concerns I have going into aged care is that I want them to know that I have spent time in an institution. If I have to go into transitional care, you know, I don't want any rough treatment, I don't want any sexual misconduct happening to me, I don't want any of that whatsoever. And I want to be treated with dignity, like I'm still a human being with feelings. I'm looking for safety. You know, when you're a child and you're small and people are abusing you can't fight back. And then when you get old and you get frail, the same thing happens. There's just no way you can fight back. And that worries me, so. I have just come out of a care facility. I was touring and it was surprising. I was apprehensive about going there, but I got there and everything was like I'd sort of been there before, but I hadn't, you know. It was just like a suburb and a village. And I'm a forgotten Australian, and that was important to me, to feel sort of a real safe, a sense of belonging of being there. I'd visited other places and, well, they just made me, fearful of what I would get there as far as treatment and care. You know, it's not one size fits all in these aged care systems. Like they try to, and sometimes, well, I know, sometimes it's inflexible.
When you shipped out to Australia, you're lined up like a prisoner of war camp. That, for 5 years, was hell, that place. Going into a nursing home, knowing that the facilities are not good, would just re-traumatise me completely.
Did you come out as a child migrant, Tim? Oh, you did? What year was that?
I was illegally deported here
Same here.
by the Christian Brothers.
What year was that?
1953.
Oh, 53, as late as that. Mm.
Yeah, I was told I was a nobody.
Oh, well.
Ah.
Yes.
I was abused so badly at the orphanage. I'll never forget it ever.
Well, I don't know if you all know, I came out as a child migrant in the 1950s, but saw horrible things, but you get over it, left. But it wasn't until I had my son that I realised what he was going to be missing out on. He was going to be missing out on a family, because it was just my partner and myself, and just the three of us.
I mean, the thing that impacted on me most of all in growing up without my family was loneliness. And I went and had a look at a group of villas which were available for older people. I mean, they were nicely built, but what they had was loneliness. It was just a stark reminder of the loneliness I'd felt when I was younger.
Isolation is a real big factor
Problem, yeah.
in these situations.
You can be lucky, you can be unlucky, but I do have a very, very deep belief that whatever institution it should be, it should reflect the reality of life, and it shouldn't have a situation where we have now with older people being incarcerated into old people's home, where quite often abuse is all too prevalent.
Exactly. See, to find that you've been lobbed in a nursing home and that happens, that can be traumatic. And you'll never get over it, because you've just relived what happened to you as a child, and now it's happened to you as an older person.
We are care leavers, you know, and we've been in these places and the memories are, I mean, you just got to think, and it's in your head all the time, you know, if you don't have other distractions. And we're getting old now, and
That's right.
we might be facing the same sort of dilemma.
Morning to you, Julie. Hello.
I don't know if I'm really looking forward to going into home, but if needs be, yes, if I have to. If I can't move or I'm paralysed or something like that, well, maybe then.
Yeah, you want a very supportive environment when you go
Yeah,
into these
that's
places.
it.
Yeah, you can feel it when it's not right. There's no warmth there. I went into a dementia facility where my friend was staying, and I was forever arguing with the people that were running it.
What annoyed you then?
The lack of cultural sensitivity for a start, and you know, they just throw you around like you're a rag doll. And
I don't want to go into a nursing home for that, because I'll be put to one side, and I don't want that. I want to be treated as an equal. And if they can't treat me as an equal, they're not going to get me in there.
Freedom is the big thing. Going into aged care should not mean automatically, as it does now, loss of freedom.
Yeah.
that would be my concern. I'd be enclosed in a little small room in a nursing home, and I would not have that freedom to, up and go. And
I know the place where my friend is. You need to know the code to get from one place to another. I don't want that. I want to be able to walk wherever I want to walk. You don't want to be confined inside all the time.
we're all sort of getting worried we're getting on, and we don't want to experience the same thing we did when we were little children.
Don't face another institution.
No.
I think.
When I suffered from what happened to the orphanage, I moved on because of this institution here. This was the lifeline for me from the word go.
Oh, that's good, Ted.
And I owe this place big time.
The nursing place. places that you go to, it's up to them to approach Tuart Place and let us know what their services are and what they provide. You know, like Dave said, he's done his due diligence. You do the research type thing, don't you?
You
do it yourself. Yeah,
you can't just.
And most people wouldn't think to do that. No, I've never thought to do that.
As a wise lady said to me a few weeks ago when I was there, she says, "Don't leave it too late and let others make the decisions for you."
Oh, good advice.
You know, and I thought, so that's good advice, and she was giving it to me right from the heart. And she said, you know, I've seen it too often, and that's what happens, and you know.
That's why I want to go and check this one out again. Because nobody's approached me to go
As a trauma survivor, I feel that I have to be safe all times. I always have to have an exit. If anything goes wrong, I need a way to get out and get out fast. I don't like people behind me. I don't like people touching my neck. I can't imagine having someone wash my hair, you know, over a basin, because in the home, they used to hold you under the water in the bath. I have real trust issues. I can get on okay with people, that's fine. Not a problem, but I would never trust anybody ever again, not with my life. Me, I think people should be allowed to stay in their own home. As, you know, you stay in your home till you die.
Well, Beck, what can I say? What a fantastic a film that you've produced there. I just invite you to come back on screen, Beck. That is a magnificent production. Thank you so much for adding that to the resources that we've got. And I do reiterate, and you're driving it as well as doing this, perhaps you shouldn't be doing that, Beck. But thank you so much. Fantastic production. It is an enormous body of work. Like to thank Kath, Dave, and the others that participated in that filmmaking, and encourage everyone to take Rebecca's kind offer to distribute that widely. Thanks so much. It's a very powerful message. I really appreciate your time today and your work. Thank you, Rebecca. I know that we're over time, so I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly. I'd like to thank firstly the co-facilitators, Gloria and Margot. Thank you so much to both of you for being willing to undertake that role today. It's been an important one, and thank you for sharing your stories. I'd like to thank today's speakers, Isolde, Al, Peter, Brian, Margaret, Mel, Philip, Sarah, and Beck. Thank you all for your contributions today. I'd particularly also like to thank the sponsors. Without sponsorship, we would not have been able to do today's forum. So I'd like to particularly thank our event partner, Department of Health and Aged Care. Our platinum sponsor, Micah Projects. Thanks, Micah, for always supporting out the work of the Roundtable. I'd also like to thank Governance by Design. Any of you who have boards or committees that you work to or with, I'd highly recommend Sonia Byers and the work that she does on ensuring excellence in governance. And thank you, Sonia, for continuing to support the work of our Roundtable. Our gold sponsor, Helping Hand. Thank you, Helping Hand, for the work that you've been forging over several years in trying to promote better care and support. Our diamond sponsor, Community Resourcing, and I'd particularly like to thank the staff, Emma and Georgie, for their background work today, particularly troubleshooting when technology never wants to work well. The AV sponsor, Regional Development Australia, Logan and Redlands, on the lands in which we're presenting today. And our gold sponsor, Aspire for Life. Thank you, Michael, and your staff for again supporting our International Care Experience Forum. Your support is really appreciated. In terms of the hubs, I'd like to also acknowledge the extensive work that Lotus Place in Queensland, Chewett Place in Western Australia, Wattle Place in New South Wales and Open Place in Victoria have done to bring people together in one room to access this. And importantly, to call the event to a close, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who joined us today. Please be in touch. There's our details on the screen now. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to be involved. We'd love you to post some things in your LinkedIn that link to our LinkedIn. And again, we look forward to hosting more events through the International Care Experience History Month next year. And I'd encourage anyone in attendance today to think about perhaps doing your own events also, and we would help publicise those. Again, thank you, everyone. I'm sorry we ran a little over time, but thank you for staying online.